Directors meetings for February 2023. Can't believe we're already in February. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Denise, can we get a roll call, please?
Director Walper?
Here.
Director Martinez? Here. Director Berman?
Here.
Director Johnston?
Here.
Director Shibahara? Here. Vice Chair Wheeler?
Here.
Chair Rydell?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, so first, Denise, was the agenda properly notified?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Now we need a motion to approve or amend the agenda as presented here.
Chair Rydell, I move to move the agenda, or approve the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Item C, Board of Directors reports. We'll start with Director Walper.
I have nothing.
All right, thank you, sir. Director Berman.
Nothing to report. It's going to be a long night, so.
Good call.
Same.
Same. Boy, we're making it fast here.
Same.
Same.
I will stay in line. Same.
You know I'm not staying in line, right?
Yeah.
Nor am I.
We're letting you two take the lead here tonight. Get all
The
the
two wrong
time.
people that take the lead on these ones. Vice Chair Wheeler.
I just wanted to report, went to a couple Clackamas River Elementary assemblies recently. Both of them are very high energy. Mr. Wolf is next level, and I think him and Miss Anderson pair well. They play the game very well with the kids. A lot of respect for them from the kids and the teachers in there, you can tell. Also, two kids in the middle school. And everything that comes out of the middle school as far as communication is very to the point. Your kid's doing well, we're lacking here, you need to do this. And it's just refreshing that we don't have to go searching a lot of times. You can go searching and find more, obviously, but if they're not doing their math, Miss Warren is all over it. She's got both the boys in there. And a lot of the other teachers are the same way. Just, hey, remember to talk to your kid about this, and it's an easy conversation, and we're on track. So I appreciate that. With all the other communication that goes on, it's very refreshing just to be able to keep it simple and smooth and concise. Nothing else to report, Chair Rydell.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wheeler. I will report on one topic tonight. So as many people know, Mary Poppins, the musical theater performance was here just recently. Excuse me, it was fantastic, extremely well attended. So I go to all of these, and it was by far the most highest attended Saturday matinee I've ever seen, and might have been the most attended show of the entire run. So fantastic. Big shout out to Mr. Frunk and Ms. Collins. The amount of time and effort and energy outside of their paid work time to pull off a show like that is pretty incredible. The quality of the performance, I know a lot of musical theater and music directors in the state of Oregon, and the quality of the performance is better than what 5A and 6A neighboring schools were putting out there. It's not even close. So it's really, really awesome to see. What I thought was funny, counting up the numbers, almost 10% of our student body participated in that show in either on stage or part of the crew. So when you start thinking around programs and extracurricular activities, how many of those do we have 10% of our student body participating in? Not very many, which is a huge win. So super stoked about that. Big thank you to the district. For anybody that was there, we were able to rent a flying machine, so we were able to fly the kids across the stage. Just brought a whole nother dynamic to the show. And again, got calls from many musical theater directors in the local area saying, what the heck, man. One, which will remain unnamed, just did Mary Poppins in November, didn't have the flying, didn't have some of the props that we had that made a real difference in the show. So it's a lot of fun to see. So thank you to the district. Thank you, Josh, for coming out and putting together a professional recording for us. And just super excited about the support from the district and from the community. It was awesome. Staying on that theme, we do have theater regionals was this last weekend, so we sent a group of kids down to theater regionals. I don't have results from that tabulated yet. We have several students that were selected to participate in an honor band this coming weekend. I believe it's at Nelson High School. Who plans an honor band event on Super Bowl Sunday? I'm not terribly sure, but it's obviously band people. So we will be watching a recorded version of the Super Bowl in my house. And then we do have one solo, or the All-State Music Festival was a few weeks ago. Kids did great. We have one student that's going to Bellevue for the All-Northwest Honor Choir as well next weekend. And then we'll have solo ensemble coming up after that. So a lot of music stuff going on in the wintertime. So that's all I have. All right. Thank you for indulging me. District reports. Up first is communications with Maggie and Danny.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm pleased this evening to be joined by my colleague Danny Randall, our community liaison for the district. She'll be speaking in a few moments, but as we speak about sunsetting our strategic plan, I'm particularly excited about her position because this was something that the community advocated for time and time again in our conversations in our strategic plan under our Engaged Families pillar. So it's exciting to bring on this position. So our February communications report, I'll keep brief. Some of our projects in progress that we are really focusing on right now are long-range planning. Our first planning meeting will be coming up in 2 weeks on February 21st. We'll be sending out robust communication, including postcards, that will allow our entire community the opportunity to RSVP to that event. And we'll also be live streaming it for people that aren't able to attend. We really want to make this accessible. Strategic planning, as I mentioned, our strategic plan sunsets at the end of this year. So we want to hear from a lot of community voices. Last year we heard from last time we did this, we heard from thousands of people. So we're hoping to do a similar process. Focus groups are kicking off this Friday. We're hearing from some classified staff members. We'll do focus groups throughout the end of February and then a lot of in-person sessions with community members. We'll have town halls in much of March, so then you'll start to see those invites come out as we invite the broad community to some town hall events. And then lastly, DHP communication, as a reminder, in case anyone has forgotten, that is Destination High Performance, our conference that we are hosting March 14th and 15th in the district. Of course, there is a lot of logistic communications that go into that, but also I just want to remind our community of what we're doing and why we are doing this, as well as give us the opportunity to celebrate and recognize what an accomplishment this is for our district and have our community be able to recognize that as well. Some things we have completed recently, we did a Facebook Live event with Superintendent Carpenter. We had over 600 people engaged in that process throughout the Facebook Live, so always a good opportunity to touch more people than we might be able to talk to with in-person events, so that was a great opportunity. I should have put this in continuing projects, but we finished our first round of grad rate communication. Grad rates for this last year were just released a couple of weeks ago. We had a wonderful Estacada News article just recognizing the accomplishment of the district and Estacada High School in particular, and we want to continue to recognize that success. And then lastly, we'll talk about this more later on this evening, but we recently completed a community survey where we heard from 400 community members, and our goal is to always create meaningful and accurate data to allow you to make the really difficult decisions around community vision. So I'm excited to dig more into that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Danny.
Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Danny Randall. I'm excited to be here as your community liaison. I have been a member of our community for as long as I can remember. I'm a product of the Estacada School District, and I currently have 2 kids at Rivermill. So I am excited to be a part of this team and to help share the great work that you guys are doing. We're just going to stick to projects in progress since I'm still fairly new in my role. First off, and probably the most important at this point, would just be gaining knowledge on district operations, district departments, and educational initiatives and facilities. So really just gathering all the information that I can from the administration standpoint so that I can go out into the community and knowledgeably communicate clearly to them what the work is going on around here, and then be able to just be another person to share that information effectively. I'm also working on long-range planning outreach with Maggie, so just explaining exactly what long-range planning is to people in the community, trying to reach a vast group of people that can come and be a part of our committee, and then being able to really explain the necessity of a long-range plan for our district. Identifying new audiences and avenues for the district to reach community members. That is something that is a big goal in my role, is to be able to find and pinpoint these groups that may not otherwise be getting the information that we're sharing because they, whatever the wall or the barrier is, but for the most part it seems to be that they don't currently have a student enrolled in the district, and so those people are our stakeholders and we are responsible to share that same information. And so that is going to be a big goal of mine, is to be able to find those people, those groups, those organizations, and let them know. And as you said, we completed the polling, so that really is going to be a great asset to me to be able to pinpoint who needs accurate information and how we can effectively communicate that with them. And then lastly, that's kind of piggybacking on the last bullet point, just connecting with the local communities, committees, boards, groups. I've reached out to a lot of people already in the time that I've been here, just letting them know that I'm here and a resource for them. And then hopefully being able to continue and build on those relationships.
Awesome.
Any questions?
The facilities plan on the 21st, is that right?
21st, yes. Mark your calendar, and please RSVP if you would like to attend.
Is that the one that Joe and I volunteered for?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so Joe and I will be part of that meeting.
We will put you on the RSVP list.
What time of day is that planning, are we planning on
It's
that?
at 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Yep.
All right, definitely make sure that Joe and I get calendar invites.
Okay, we'll start sending
We're excited.
information to you. Yes, we're
So
excited
are
to see
we.
you.
The funny thing is, I actually just tried to put it in my phone while you were saying that, and it came up in Jeremy Adamson, Nick Hogan, and Marcia.
Really?
So we had one about the same time,
Oh, no kidding.
10 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So, anyway, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Welcome
Thank you.
aboard, Danny. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Maggie.
Thanks.
Nice job, guys.
Number 2, building and facilities report with Mr. Mike Ware.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
The operations report tonight will be a little bit different, a little quicker than normal, as we'll kind of defer some time to our FCA, or long-range planning discussion, a little bit later. However, I wanted to update the board on our capital improvement project, specifically the River Mill Seismic Rehab Project. Our design phase is now at 100%, and the procurement process is scheduled to begin about mid-February. That's what we're working with WRK and our CMGC Cedar Mill to start that process. We are anticipating some work to be done over the spring and May break. There are a few classrooms that need to have some additional work done prior to the start. And with the fact that we have a shorter summer this year, we want to make sure we stay on pace and on schedule. And as I learn more of what those projects will be, I'll be able to communicate that to the board next month. Right. District projects, E-rate project, if you recall, E-rate is a reimbursement or a grant program that allows the district to apply for to improve the infrastructure of the IT world, if you will, or IT components of a district. This time around, we have applied for 2 projects replacing switches at the Clackamas ESD. At the Clackamas ESD, there's a server farm, basically, and they house a lot of our servers. There are servers, and we need to replace them. So this E-rate grant will supply us with new switches, as well as adding all tech closets at CRE, which are 3 of them, so our IDFs and NBFs will be upgraded to single-mode fiber. This is our final phase to completing the single-mode fiber in the district, allowing us to get to 10G, really making our infrastructure for IT connectivity network very robust. So we're very excited about it. Both E-rate grants will provide district up to $80,000 towards these projects. We are required as a district and part of the E-rate program to cover approximately 20%. So as we're closing up those RFPs, or actually RFQs, our tech director is going to be working with the contractors that we chose and moving forward with this spring. Okay? And then lastly here, district projects, wanted to provide just some things that we've been, our facility maintenance department have been working through this last month. We've had some HVAC issues at a few of our schools and going through some updates and needed repairs on boiler controls and spider controls in various classrooms. We've had some plumbing repairs needed to be addressed this last few weeks. We replaced a 1-inch line at the high school staff room, which broke inside the wall. We replaced some plumbing issues at our district office. And then we've also, this was not a repair, this was a new addition. We've added a new sink and kind of prep area. If you recall, I think 2 winters ago, we did a project in the kitchen where we moved the dish station from outside that, if you can picture the cafeteria and kitchen, there's a little kind of small space where the wash station was. We moved that out of that area into the main part of the kitchen as part of a grant and capital improvement investment. We're now utilizing that space to find different ways to improve our student experience. And our nutrition services coordinator is working with our high school students, high school leadership, and kitchen leadership on what that will look like to, again, collect voice and improve that experience for our students. So we're very excited for that opportunity to move forward. And most of the work that has been done has been about zero cost out of our district pocket by procuring labor and support from local contractors. And then finally, some preventative maintenance. Our roof inspections at the high school and our health center have been completed. We removed all the debris, which is an important piece and part of our process, and gutters clean as we get into a little bit more of the stormy winter times. We are actively working through Ranger Woods as well as the North Complex on some preventative care, cleaning up Ranger Woods, make sure the debris is cleaned up and suitable for people to walk through, and working on the north side of the North Complex on any issues within the vegetation. Any questions?
I got one for you.
Go for it.
North Complex, I saw that the city was out surveying probably a month and a half ago.
Yes.
Have they communicated anything on when they're going to punch that right away in?
They have not. I've been working with their engineer, not working, we've been in contact. They're still a ways out. They're working through, really, I think the last phase is how they're going to cross the road over the creek on the north side to connect up to that road. And sorry, I don't know what that road is. Cemetery Road, yeah. And so the engineer is working through 2 different options, whether they have to cross it twice or redirect the creek, which.
Oh, we already went down this.
Yeah, yep, we have, and twice. And so they're working, the city, along with their engineers, working through that process right now. That's part of the delay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Other thing was with regards to boiler and then the mini splits in the Rivermill Annex. Are we still running boilers in the annex?
Yes, we have.
Probably partially because we have the
Partially.
gym.
And we're still wanting to bring in some outside air.
Gotcha, okay. And then the last thing is the wood-fired boiler here. Everything going good?
Things are going well. We just placed another order for more pellets. We're still firing it up, and it's working just fine.
Excellent.
Yep.
That's it for now.
Quick question. We talked about it a little bit last year, but, gaining all that additional grass and what we have out there, do we have enough people to take care of all that, enough hours to take care of all that extra space?
I would happy to be able to show the board of our time analysis of what we have for our total acreage. We have the ability to maintain and really mow, weed, and trim the area. When we start getting into a lot of the preventative work, it does put a strain on our department. We've been maintaining it, and we're working with the city on finding new innovative ideas to support the staffing of that department, whether they're supporting a part of FTE, which is nothing confirmed yet, or supporting financially to help us with resources.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Okay, anything else for Mike? All right, thank you. Excuse me. Number 3, finance and report.
Thank you.
Irish.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
I'm going to share with you a financial update for January 31st, 2023. First look is at the general fund. You'll see here that our projected revenue is 42.6 million. Our projected expenditures are just about 38 million, and that leaves us with the ending fund balance of 4.6 million, which is about 13%. And just a quick reminder, you do have your full packet in your board packet, just giving you some quick highlights. The next is our budget to actuals. For our instructional services, we're at 93.1% of year-to-date and encumbrance of our budget. For support services, we're at 89.3% year-to-date in encumbrance. And then our other uses, we are projecting to fully transfer all of our.
One question, Christina,
Yeah.
on the instruction. Have we built in sufficient funds to cover sub costs for the
That-
second half of the year, do we feel?
Yes, that
Okay.
does include some projections for sub costs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. The next report is our capital projects report. Our projected revenue is 2.6 million. Just want to talk about this a little bit. You'll see at the top line our construction excise tax. I did adjust our forecast for that. We are just, the revenue that is not coming in like it has the past 4 years. So I am not projecting that we will get our full budget for that. I'm going to continue monitoring that, and I'll keep you updated monthly on that. And then our projected expenditures are the 2 million, and that will leave us with almost 600,000 in our capital projects.
Christina, on the construction excise tax, do you know how long of a lag it is from the time that somebody pulls a permit and they pay the fee to the Clackamas County or the city? To when
I
we see it?
don't know the exact amount. I'm happy to inquire at both the city and county and see if I can get that information.
I was just wondering, because I was going to bring that up, that construction's definitely tapering off, and so that number should be substantially lower than what we projected, but I didn't know if we're already seeing that, or if this is a number from all the way back in September, that it's going to be way worse.
I did do a 4-year analysis, and this year, we, at this point, are lower than we have been at the last 4 years.
Okay, thanks.
And then on for good information, our enrollment reports, we did see an increase. Our total enrollment for Estacada School District is 1,892, which is an increase of 9 from last month and 140 from last year at this time. And then with the charter school, we're at 3,117, which is an increase of 25 from last month and 62 from last year at this time. And then here's my favorite chart showing you our climb.
Excited to see that line going back up in January like we were hoping it would.
Yep.
So, and historically, we see that as a trend too, so.
That is all I have to share with you.
Okay. Any questions for Christina? Nope. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now on to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Carpenter.
All right, thank you, Board, and appreciate the opportunity. This is going to be a little bit longer than usual, only because there is a lot going on, in particularly the start of the second semester. I thought it was important to share with the Board as well as the community just how we're doing halfway through the school year. It's so important as we conduct short cycles of improvement to always have the opportunity to look and see how our change agents are impacting our systems, to see if we need to make any adjustments. And so, of course, we do that with aligned goals, aligned behaviors, and aligned processes, and then we hold ourselves accountable to doing what we said we would do to our community. And this is our attempt to do that. So first and foremost, the greatest win to celebrate of all time is that Estacada High School just experienced its record number one report of on-time high school graduation at 87%. At any time in Estacada High School's history, it has never been this high. And so we're very excited about these results and vindication of a lot of great work being done inside our school district. We're also happy to share that Summit Learning Charter also reported its highest graduation rate at 92.6%. They continue to just meet our expectations, exceed them, quite frankly, in a way that makes them such a valuable partner for us. Both of those scores together equals an 89.7% Estacada School District graduation rate, which again is our highest as a district in school history. I think a really cool graph to see of our history and our improvement trajectory is really quite well documented right here. We are that really low performing turquoise line for those watching online, as well as for the board. There is an asterisk by that because there's some reasons for that steep growth, but at the end of the day, our commitment to continuous improvement inside this district and the talent that we've hired to work with our community and our children is really taking full effect. We also eliminated a very low-performing charter school option. That was one of the things that I wanted to accomplish in my tenure as a superintendent here in the school district, and you can see that the results of that elimination of that program is also playing a tremendous impact in how we share our story with our community. As you can see now, Estacada used to be the lowest performing school district by far. In Clackamas County, we now are the fourth highest on-time graduation rate in the county, just short of Lake Oswego, Westland, Wilsonville, and North Clackamas. I always like pointing out for fun, and I'm glad my colleague, Mr. Didway, gets to be a part of this conversation as well. But the thing I love is Lake Oswego has a population of 4% of its children are identified as students in poverty. The Estacada School District has 51% of its children who are identified as experiencing poverty. And the fact that we are competing for preparedness and readiness tells us that the things that we're doing and the talent that we've brought to our school district to work with a complex and challenging demographic of students is really doing quite effective work. And I'm most proud of that. This chart, by the way, it's easy to make charts. This one comes from the Oregon Department of Education. And so I just wanted to point out that I did not make that graph. So how are we doing? Our first 18 weeks, this is semester one. It's always important to see just how, in fact, our kids are learning this school year, and we take data very seriously inside the Estacada School District. So semester one of 2022, that would be February 6th when this data was pulled. Last year, 70% of our students were demonstrating proficiency in 100% of their essential learning standards. Again, just to remind everyone, essential learning standards is what our teachers in their PLC process are determine what is most essential that our kids must learn in order to be successful in the next grade level. So it's probably important that we track how our kids are doing and what our teachers deem most important. And so a year ago, 70% of our students K through 12 demonstrated proficiency in 100% of the essential learning standards. This year, that's at 79%. So we're seeing a 9% increase in our students. That's life-changing for many of our students, and I'm very proud of this work K through 12. Another thing that's come up from the voice of our teachers is the frustration that comes with an increase in student apathy. It seems year after year we continue to hear that students are doing less and less assigned work that are assigned by the teachers. This was an important improvement measure for us this year, and so I just wanted to report that year over year, so this time last year versus this time this year, we've seen a 7% increase in students turning in their work. I truly believe our read days on Fridays are also contributing directly to this, as teachers are targeting and working in a more explicit and specific fashion to make sure the kids are meeting those needs. Just a quick breakdown by the high school for everybody to see, because this is really quite tremendous. How are we doing school by school? Estacada Middle School last year, 54% of its students were demonstrating proficiency in 100% of its classes. This year in January, that's now 78%. So we're seeing a 24% learning achievement increase. For those of you who have students at the middle school, I think you can see and feel the difference in the culture and the work and the focus on the rigor that's going on inside of that. Estacada High School is experiencing a 27% increase of students passing what we deem is most essential. And then Clackamas River Elementary and River Mill are at 6% and 9% respectively. But the thing I want to point out about this is while their growth score is not as giant as the middle school and high school, the fact that we have 91% of our children demonstrating proficiency is really quite phenomenal. And the challenge is continuing to get that to grow. And so I'm very proud of that. I'll pause for questions.
Yeah, just, not a question, a comment, because it stuck out when you said life-changing, when you look at that 9% improvement of students that are meeting 100% of the standards. And so when you just look at numbers, that's 170 students more.
Yes.
170 students more this year than last year that are meeting 100% of the essential learning
That's
standards.
correct.
So that's a big number.
Yes.
So
Yep.
kudos to the district on that. So.
And I'll pass that along. Thank you. Again, just very quickly, in terms of closing the gap when it comes to work completion, this is one of our priority improvement standards. You can see that there's also improvement across the board. 11% at the middle school, 17% at the high school, 3 and 1 at the elementaries. But here's what's cool about the elementaries. We've got 99% of the work that's been assigned by teachers being turned back in for quality, meaningful feedback. And I'm proud of that. So where do we stand in our school district scorecard? Again, this is the commitment that we are making to our community about doing what we said we would do in correlation with the strategic plan. Last year, at the end of the last school year, our students were 77% demonstrated proficiency in 100% of the essential learning standards. Halfway through this school year, we're at 79%. Our goal is to hit that 85% benchmark by the end of this school year. So your superintendent is communicating today that I believe that we are well on that path towards meeting that 85% goal, and I'm very proud of that. And our team, everybody from serving lunches, driving the school bus, to supporting the challenging, complex problems inside our classroom, everyone is participating in this. Very fastly, we conducted another school tour again today. I want to thank our leaders and our teachers for opening up their classrooms and allowing people to come in to see this evidence-based leadership at work inside the classroom. On this tour, we had all of our vice principals who took this tour, so they got to see this work happening K through 12. We also had 4 teachers, 1 from each building, get to observe, and we also experimented on this journey with parents today. And so we had parents who were also a part of this, and what an eye-opening experience it was for them to be able to just see the work that's happening. And although they get to experience what's happening in their own child's classroom, it's eye-opening to see that this is happening district-wide. And just such a rarity in today's public education world, and something we're really proud of. Meg, you already touched on the reminder of our Destination High Performance West Coast, which is coming to Estacada March 14th. We expect to have somewhere around 300 leaders from around the United States. There are 17 spots left, and so it's going to be a sold-out event. And so I'm excited for Estacada to have the opportunity to tell their story, as well as I'm excited that Estacada gets to continue to contribute to continuous improvement throughout the country and people who are engaging in this very important work. A quick update on our HVAC. We had told the public as well as our employees that through ESSER funds, we had budgeted $208,000 to start installing mini splits into our statistically hottest classrooms inside our school district. That meant Clackamas River, Estacada Middle School, and Estacada High School was going to receive some form of climate control in what we deemed were the hottest classes. Unfortunately, we just received 4 bids, I believe, for this work in our RFP process. And unfortunately, if I haven't said that word yet, the lowest bid came in at $731,000. The highest bid came in at $761,000, which is about $500,000 more than we had budgeted for. So we're disappointed in being able to outsource this process, but that doesn't mean that the board nor its superintendent is going to give up on our vision to making sure that our students have a great climate inside their classroom for high levels of learning. It just requires us to take a different and more innovative look at how we can support this process. And so the operations department led by Mike Ware is beginning this innovative look at some different options that we can do in an effort to make good on the things that we want to while still being fiscally responsible with taxpayer money and federal grants. So I look forward to a deeper conversation with the executive board as well as individual board members on some thoughts that they might have that could help us be closer to our targeted budget while still meeting the needs and the voices of our employees and students.
How many units was that offhand, do you remember?
33, I think.
33?
Yeah. Can you tell who's the general contractors in this room?
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
You doing it too, man?
Yeah, everyone.
I need to start installing mini splits. Is what I just need to start doing.
As I continue, very importantly, last week, our new governor, Tina Kotek, released the governor's proposed budget for the state of Oregon. I think it's important to let our public know that the governor's proposal was at $9.9 billion. I think it's also important to articulate in our local community that that does not mean we get $9.9 billion. We do, however, get $27.8 million of that $9.9 billion, which represents a 5.3% increase from what our budget was last year to what a budget could be this year. It's also important to note that even though that's what the governor said, that just is their proposal. The Ways and Means from the House legislature and Senate said 9.4. And then COSA, who represents, is the Special Lobby Group for Administrators. OEA is Teachers Union. OASBO is the Business Nerds. And OSBA is for school board folks. And OSCA is classified folks. They're lobbying for 10.3 in a collective fashion. And so you can expect with the economy and politics and everything else that typically plays its game that there's going to be a fight over the next couple months down in Salem, and we won't truly know what that number looks like until Salem has made that final decision. That being said, we still need to make plans and prepare for the future. And so the Estacada School District is going to begin building its budget on 9.9, which we believe will be in the ballpark of where things end up landing. And so we're excited to engage our board, which we'll talk more about later in terms of what building that budget looks like. The Student Success Account, or SIA, is at $977 million. That represents a 9.5% increase. For Estacada, that equates to about a $200,000 increase from what we budgeted last year. For those that can remember, that pays for ultimately 14 paraeducators serving our inclusive practice work inside our school district, social and emotional health experts, vice principals, and a few other community liaison things, a few other things that help support the whole child and their experience inside our school district. And then ballot measure 98's at $329.7 million statewide. That's a 5.8% increase, roughly leading to a $25,000 increase. And ballot measure 98 ultimately pays for some of our high school dropout prevention work that we do, as well as it expands and supports our CTE, career technical education programs. I think that's all to say about that. We're beginning our strategic planning process, very much looking forward to that work. We've already begun kicking this off by engaging with some of our classified folks and collecting their voice of what they want their school district, whom they work for, to look like over the course of the next 5 years. This is going to be a very robust process. Our goal is for this strategic plan process to reach thousands, multiple thousands, because we truly want a strategic plan that reflects the values of Estacada. And we want to make sure that our school district is truly a representative of its people and is educating its people in the values that it is established for its community. I think it goes without saying, amid a wildfire, a pandemic, and other crazy things, our ability to have a strong strategic plan that we were able to lean on with our mission, vision, and values truly allowed our school district to thrive during all of these crazy times. And I'm very excited to talk with our community about what the next 5 years looks like for their school district. Lastly, you're going to hear conversations today, and we'll be asking the board to vote on a personal communication device for all of our employees. More will come in this meeting about that, other than just to say a general why we're having this conversation in the first place. And as we know, children post-pandemic are more complex and have more complex issues that all of our professional educators and support staff are working with. On any given day, there are multiple employees who need additional supports in an effort to serve an escalating student, a student with significant challenges and unique needs. And the demand and cry from our employees is for an improved communication system so that they can seek help when necessary, as well as for other capacities for us to have the ability to serve and support each other inside this school district. And so through a pretty comprehensive process, this is where we're landing, and I'm excited for Mike Ware to share more and lead a discussion more about this. But why we're having this conversation is because of the voice of our employees who are working with severely impacted students and how we, as the employer, can serve and support that work. It's becoming much more like hospital work and less like other work that public education has used to be traditionally. Lastly, I just want to share to the board of directors as well as to the community the data on our shift from a 5-day week to a 4-day school week with read days, intervention days on Fridays. So we had 4 primary goals of why we wanted to move in this direction. This came from the community, this came from the board, and this came from our employees, these 4 goals. So how are we doing? 1, we wanted to increase student outcomes. You can see, as I shared with you at the beginning of the superintendent's report, we're seeing a 9% increase in student outcomes. 2, we wanted to improve the employee retention rate. As we know, post-pandemic, and as we work with a millennial staff whom is new to the workforce, and a Generation Z, which is new to the workforce, this was a more appealing work schedule. And it's difficult as we compete with other school districts inside the metro area. We want to have a competitive edge. You can see from last year to this year, we experienced a 92% retention rate, which is an anomaly in other school districts around the United States. We also wanted to improve our student attendance, knowing that Fridays was a lesser attended day for our children, and right now we're seeing a 1% increase. And so we're not seeing quite the burst that we had hoped for. I do want to point out, though, that we were ravaged by some nasty sicknesses really throughout the year and continue to do so, and so I do think that that's a statistical factor inside this work. And then lastly, our 4th goal was to improve our attendance rate. Our sub-fill rates are brutal, and our staff need to be able to take their days off to stay rested to offer high services to our students. You can see that our employee attendance rate has improved by 7%. And so I can tell you that the 4 goals that we hoped for in moving from a 5-day week to a 4-day week are being hit, some stronger than others. And then lastly, with those read days, one of the things that we are seeing, which I shared with you, is a 7% increase in our work completion rate. And so that is just an extra factor of our movement to this, is in fact leading to more engagement, which allows for more feedback from our teachers. So that's just a quick update on the things that we're following to make sure that our changes are in fact making the desired intended changes. That's your superintendent's report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I've got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the students' achievement, it might behoove us to let the community know how we set those goals and how we prepare for them, rather than just assuming. Can you do that?
Yes, sir, Director Walper. We hope to start sending more flyers in our mails and through the post office to not only touch the parents who are a part of this, but also people who are unengaged with the school whatsoever, because I do think this is important news to get out to everybody. Yeah.
Ryan, is the only 1% increase in attendance, does that take only unexcused absences, or does it also take excused absences from schools?
It collects all absences except the school-sponsored event. So if a kid misses a class to go to the Dalles for a basketball game, we do not count that in that data point. But hunting trips does count against us. Yep.
And I'm sure we're all thinking, like, I mean, the growth of 9% and 7% for both is just amazing. I mean, and kudos to the entire team for working extremely hard to get that done.
Thank you.
And that would be my comment too on the read days. I can tell you, I have 2 high school students, and it dramatically impacts their timeliness of work completion when we don't have a read day that week.
Yes.
Did I put that right? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, it does make a difference, and it's, I can tell you from my experience in talking to other families, that day is very intentional for a lot of our families.
Yes, it
and
is.
used as an opportunity for kiddos to have additional time, and the teachers have been spectacular of making time and utilizing that, so huge success.
Thank you. And I do think it's important because we still know that there are people out in the community that scoff at moving from a 5-day week to a 4-day week. But I can tell you with data, and again, every school district is different who does this, but the data right now tells us that our kids are smarter, our employees are more engaged, and our kids are completing the work at a rate that was different than that of a 5-day week. And the demand actually for more read days from students, from employees, and believe it or not, from parents, leads us to have to go back to the conversation again about how we can make more of those days. They are making a difference.
Yeah.
Question on the read days. The E is enrichment, is that right?
That's correct.
How are we doing on those enrichment opportunities, and are we seeing more opportunities for those kids that are getting work done in a timely manner in class?
Yeah, I would say not like we have hoped for at this point. Right now, I think we're really focused on learning how we identify kids, how we communicate with parents, and then how to ultimately get the kids who need the really emergency supports here first. We do have a lot of adjustments we need to make in this second semester. Like, for example, some of our buildings and teachers are selecting kids 4 or 5 weeks out. And really, we want to look at right now data and bring kids in right now based on that data instead of forecasting in the future. So that's one example. I think as we talk about expanding our read day opportunities, I think that we need to start thinking more about how we can offer opportunities for all students. So even if not selected to come in on campus, that everyone will at least offer some type of asynchronous type of opportunity, and I think that's the place where our more enrichment can come in.
And then one other thing, I am aware of somebody who attended the tour today
Yes.
and came back with wows and a new level of understanding
Awesome.
of what's happening in the classroom, and I was really amazed on how it was seamless between all the schools and everybody's talking the same language.
Yes.
Similar to when we visited Wisconsin.
Yes.
We did that together. So,
Yep. Oh, thank you for that. And I think this was a test for us with parents, and I think that we will start incorporating more tours with more parents. It's important.
Any other questions or comments for Superintendent Carpenter? All right, thank you. All right, we are into the expanded reports and presentations portion of this evening. I'm just making eye contact with everybody so you know we got a few things to cover. We will start with the international students, and Scott Sullivan has some information to share. Come on down.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Got some great news, some exciting news. And it's not just about learning, it's about experiences as well. We've been working very hard in the last 8 months trying to put together Estacada International School. And this program is going to really cover a bunch of things. So I just want to talk about where we're at today and where we're going in our international programs. And I want to remind everyone, one of the sole purposes of this is to provide our community and our students with rich cultural experiences with people from around the world. And so the first thing that we just recently got approved, and that was our F1 visa program. We applied for that. The Department of Homeland Security came out and did a background check on us, checked out our schools, checked out my CI file, and they approved us. And as of last week, we have an official F1 visa program. That program is where we can accept students on a tuition base from throughout the world. We're working with a group of people right now to bring in, to start with, to try this out next year in the fall, 2 to 4 Ukrainian students. And each student will pay about $17,500 tuition, and we'll be able to use a little bit of that money to help us subsidize families that are hosting them to pay for some housing costs during the year. But that'll be our first jump into the F1 program. We hope that'll expand. Using that dollars, some of that money for housing will help us, because right now we average about 10 to 15 exchange students, and there's no subsidy or anything like that, the kindness of the hearts of our community. And there's only so many homes that are open and can afford to do that. So we're hoping that this will bring in more students and open up more homes for this experience. We also have a dual diploma options program that we have started with a city in Taiwan, and they are going to bring 20 students a year, and they're going to begin doing a dual credit, dual diploma program with us. So next year, 20 Taiwanese students are going to be taking courses online with the charter school, U.S. history, language arts, government, things like that, to help them earn credit. We're going to be looking at their transcripts from Taiwan, awarding credit based on connections and how it matches up to ours. The hope is after 2 years, these students will be able to get a high school diploma from Estacada School District and a high school diploma from their Taiwanese school. In addition to those online courses, those 20 students a year are going to come here in the summertime for a 4-week in-depth STEAM program cultural exchange. So 20 kids will be coming. We'll be finding families to host those 20 students. We're going to be providing them academics, robotics, culinary, manufacturing. We're going to take them river rafting. We're going to take them up to Mount Hood. We're going to take them to the Woodburn Outlet Mall. We're just going to give them the Northwest experience and hopefully allow our kids to learn a little bit about Chinese culture in Taiwan. One of the other ones that is really cool, and I'm hoping we're going to be able to pull this off, and I think we are. I have a meeting on Friday to kind of put some final plans. And we're working with the largest public school, high school in Wales. And they are going to bring us 2 students from Wales. We're going to find some host families for those 2 students who also have students in our school. They're going to come here for just 2 weeks in the fall, live and experience Portland, greater Portland area, Estacada, and Estacada High School. Then, within a week or 2, if not sooner, our students, 2 students, will go to Wales and spend 2 weeks with the families there and go to school in Wales. All at the cost of the Wales government, we are hoping.
Like that.
But we're pretty sure we're going to be able to have that covered. So some great opportunities for our students and our community with some international exchanges. Any questions about that?
Who's going to get the, oh, excuse me, how are you going to pick these 2?
Well, I'm going to go first. No. Those 2, we haven't gotten there yet, but we will do careful background checks for all of these programs. Anytime we bring in a student from another land or even out of state who wants to come to our school, we're going to do some extensive background checks on all the families. But we'll have to open it up. We'll have to figure out a way to, if there's a huge tide of interest, we're going to have to figure that out. But we haven't gotten there yet. We're still in the early stages.
Thank you.
Scott, on the F1 program, is that tuition coming from the students' families or a government program?
Generally, their families, their homes.
Thanks.
And back to the Wales project, I think I heard you infer it, but is the idea to have 2 students come here, they stay with 2 families essentially, and it would be the kids of those 2 families that then return back so that there's the continuity between the students and the families?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. And that will help with the selection process as well.
Yes.
So, awesome.
Yeah, been doing this for a long time, and those students who come here, I've always admired the courage to leave here. And we've seldom have kids go away. We've had a few, but even for 2 weeks, in the fall of their senior year or junior year, it's going to take a lot of courage. And so it's going to be an interesting experience. I can't wait to see. I won't be going, but I hope to see pictures and hear some great stories.
Scott, you said junior and senior year, is it restricted to those groups?
Right now, yes. The Wales High School we're going to be in a section of that school that is for 17 and 18-year-olds and above. So we want to keep that matched.
Cool. All right.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump to the next one if you'd like. And I want to thank Director Walper. A few months ago, he asked a very good question after listening to one of our principals talk about student data. And there was this question about how many students do we have in our schools that have always been here versus those students who have recently come into our district. So I took just the middle school for now, and I put together this chart. And really, let's just look at the sixth graders to begin with. This chart represents, and if we come up here, we have 147 sixth graders. Of those 147 sixth graders, 73 of them have been here K6. So 50% have been here their entire career. Then you'll see that 7 kids have been here all but 1 year, 13 kids have been here all but 2 years, and so on. I think if you take those bottom 4 years, and you're looking at 30, 40, you're looking at 40% or so, our students have spent less than half their time in the Estacada School District. And I went and did this for 7th and 8th graders, and then gave you a total over on the left. But it's easier to look at if you just look at by grade to determine that, you know, about half our kids basically have been here for their life. And the other half have been here from anywhere from 1 to 4 years. And so we were able to get that data on Director Walper. We've never looked at it this way, and I'm glad you brought that up. What I haven't been able to do is take every single one of those 147 sixth graders, where they came from or how long they stayed here, and apply SBAC scores or any learning data. I can't do that right now, but I can tell you something that Mr. Carpenter has already shared with you, is that when we compare last year to this year's time, our students are doing better across the board, but especially at the middle school and the high school. And so that data that Dr. Carpenter shared with you earlier shows you that we are closing the gap. Can I put it again, is that 24%, 50% of the newbies, or is that our people who have been longtime residents? I can't tell you that right now. But we can say that we are seeing a closing of the gap. And you've seen these 2 slides already, and the other one is on work completion, which helps lend itself to essential learning standards proficiency. We're seeing some growth year over year.
That's great. Thank you, Scott.
Well, thank you for asking, because that's a question we've never even looked into before in all my time here.
Well, my concern was when I heard that the majority of the students that are coming from the 6th grade to the 7th grade are not meeting expectations. I wanted to know what we're doing at the elementary school level to bring those students up to the level that they should be when they're going into the junior high. And that, I've been following that because it kind of upset me, and I wanted to make sure that we were advancing, and we are.
We are advancing.
Yeah. So what this says is 91% of them were coming out prepared.
Yeah.
Am I reading this right for this year?
Yep. At the end of semester 1.
In mid-80s last.
Yep.
Thanks again.
Pretty good.
Thank you, appreciate it. Any other questions?
Thank you. No, thank you. All right. Next up is employee communications, as previously referenced by Superintendent Carpenter, with Mike Ware back in the hot seat.
Right. Good evening again. As Superintendent Carpenter mentioned earlier, I wanted to provide the board our process and the why behind choosing or moving forward through our employee communication process. First and foremost, over the last 6 years, the district has significantly made investments to improve our safety, our communication, and our accessibility through our handheld radio system. As Superintendent Carpenter mentioned again, through various platforms, our employees have voiced the need for better one-to-one communication. Students are experiencing more complex needs post-pandemic, and a reliable, confidential, and quick accessible system is needed to support our students and employees. So we have been seeing some system errors throughout the fall, late spring last year, and really wanted to tackle that and address it. And so our process started with releasing an RFP, a request for proposal, inviting companies to provide the support needed for additional two-way communication that included the following components. It needed to have a hands-free capability. We wanted to maintain confidentiality, direct one-to-one communication, as well as group communication. We also wanted to be able to have the ability to have a D&D or do not disturb and overwrite that do not disturb if needed in an event of emergency. The intent of this RFP is or was not to replace our current communication systems. All of our leaders, all of our district leadership have our Motorola radios for emergencies, and that is not the intent to replace that. Those are still very active and will be utilized for the original purpose. Selection committee reviewed and met in January to review all proposals that were provided. Crisis Go was one of the companies that provided. They proposed using cell phones which would be purchased by the district or in other ways, and then integrating their application into those phones to communicate one-to-one with employees. Vocera was a second company that provided a bid or proposal. They proposed a lightweight wearable communication device that lets the individual communicate easily, hands-free by using your voice. And then Day Wireless proposed integrating our current walkie-talkie radio devices system-wide. Our goal is to equip every employee with one of these devices. So when I say system-wide, that's about 230, 240 employees. We invited the two companies, after the selection committee reviewed the proposals, we selected two companies to come back to do a product demonstration, Day Wireless and Vocera. As it shows a little bit later on in the agenda, we have a recommendation. Our recommendation is Vocera as a service provider for employee communications. Some of the whys around this, and I want to make sure I stop and allow for questions, but Vocera has proven to be a system that improves efficiencies by enabling teachers, enabling teachers and administrators and other staff to communicate directly in real time. Vocera addresses our employee voice, that need for a teacher to communicate with another teacher, a paraeducator, an administrator, one-to-one, as well as mass communication, whether it be a safety response team, my third grade cohort team, my PLC team if needed. And then ultimately supporting our students in different complex situations and staff. Vocera also offers some additional opportunities for future planning. It does have the ability to integrate into our current network systems of phones, potential for other systems that we're exploring as a district. It actually has the ability to eliminate our old intercom system. We can do mass communication, we can do we would be able to do scheduled communication to a specific group, as I mentioned, like a third grade team, the high school math team, or the entire high school team if we wanted to. It also has a location identifier. If I'm in the boardroom during the board meeting and I have an incident or emergency, someone would be able to identify where I am and be able to track me down. And I wanted to remind that the funding that we talked about, I believe we talked about last board meeting, that the funding is coming through ESSER 3 funds, so our federal relief funds. Nothing is coming out of our general obligation fund. Any questions?
I do. Has it been tested integrated into our current phone system, so we know it can integrate. Like, we've seen this happen, we know it can.
No, it has not been tested, but when our tech director was was part of the selection committee, and their tech person was a part of the demonstration, it's an IP phone, and so we know it works over the system.
Okay.
Why would we have two systems?
That's
Motorola and this new one that you're offering? It seems to me like you just have double trouble.
For some of us, we will have double trouble, if you will. Some of our leadership will have the radio and the Vocera device. The majority of our employees that we're focusing on are our teachers, our paraeducators, our kitchen staff who do not carry a Motorola radio device.
And what's the benefit of keeping the Motorola?
There's a couple benefits to it, primarily in an emergency situation where if we had to relocate, we are still able to communicate with each other. The Vocera device works off network. So the moment I walk off of our network, that device wouldn't work on myself. And so when we talk about emergency situations or the need to communicate with leaders in an effective way, the Motorola device has proven to be successful for us, and we would keep that. If we were able to having to reunify offsite or our network goes down, we still have the ability to do mass communication within district leadership.
Thank you.
What's the range capacity of this new device? Because I know that's another one for the Motorola, right? You can reach out and touch somebody if you need to.
Yeah, you can. And so the features to this it's twofold. So the range, anywhere there's network, and so more part of the process will Vocera, along with our tech department, will be doing a test of our network internally and externally. And we're making some efforts to make sure that our external AP or access points are already installed to ensure our network is strong enough. The moment I walk off, I don't have the ability to communicate, and I keep doing this because it kind of puts on our chest through the device. However, there is the option to communicate through a phone app and the computer as well. I can make a call via my computer to Superintendent Carpenter, leave him a voicemail, which would be dinged at another time, or I can use my phone. Oftentimes, well, not often, but there are maybe times where if I need to work from home and I don't bring my radio home, then I am not in tune with what's going on in communication. I can simply log into my phone or computer and still be aware of what's going on, support if needed.
And when you say network, that would basically be on the Wi-Fi system, right?
Correct.
So just to make
network
sure
is
that.
Wi-Fi.
And so is there limitations from building to building, or is it just if you're on the network, you're good to go?
It's just a matter if you drop network. Now, we have a pretty robust network system, as we mentioned earlier, and we would be able to identify if there's going to be any gaps. So if I'm walking from high school to middle school, may not be because it's so close. If I'm going from high school to Clackamas River and I'm driving, I'll probably lose network.
Got it, okay.
For a period of time.
But if you're in Clackamas River and I'm in the high school, we can talk,
good.
no problem.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
okay.
So I got another question. I see Ryan walking around with a little earphone. You gonna have one in each ear now?
No. The intent is not to have a secondary earpiece for this. We need to work through our protocols on communication to make sure that when we're communicating to individuals that we do it in a confidential manner, but we will not be having a secondary earpiece.
This device is tried and tested and is, in fact, is commonplace in all major hospitals. Vocera is giant in the medical industry and is just now coming into the educational field. So if you've been to a hospital lately, they all have those devices, and it allows them to call 10 people, 3 people, or just one-on-one, which is different than the walkie-talkie where you only have certain channels. And this would be a hands-free device that says, call the board. And if the school board each had one, then all of your devices would light up and it would be an intercom type talking system. If I just said call Director Shibahara, then it would just work one-on-one that way.
So it's voice activated.
Voice activated, hands-free. If a parent were to call in and wanted to speak to a teacher on the phone, the secretary could just forward the phone call to the device and they could have a phone call with the parent right there. If a parent calls and says they want to change them from riding on a bus to a parent pickup, the secretary could say, call Director Martinez, hey, Johnny's a parent pickup now, and it just happens right there. And so it's very controlled in ways that you can talk to a bunch or just singular people just through voice activation.
This might be for discussion during the vote, but is there licensing fees? Do we buy them, lease them?
We buy the product. We have an annual cost of about $8,000 a year for support and services. We've asked the question if, let's say, they move on and expand or do a new product, would our product still be working? And yes, it would still work because they gave us an example of an older product that no longer exists, that they're not making, but it still works on their system and whatnot. But it allows us, they do allow a couple years for us, the district or the company, to plan ahead if needed. And so, yes, we would pay about $8,000 a year.
Then what's your rollout plan? Or do you give 240 people a device on Monday?
We're all going to line up outside of high school. No, I'm sorry. It takes, at worst, 6 to about 12 weeks to get everything in play. First step is the implementation of checking our network, making sure we have what we need in place, and then the second phase is getting devices on site, going through work groups or all those setups that we're talking about. We anticipate to be able to fully implement next fall, with the hopes of maybe trying some pilot opportunities late spring, summertime. But our goal is to fully implement, and at this time I don't have the exact answer how we're going to hand these out and what the training will look like, but we'll be side by side in this process with those.
Will they give you 20 of them to play with for the rest of the year, and to Will's point, test a little?
That's the hope, yes. That's where we're going to be advocating for us to get a few of them, even if they're not fully integrated to work groups, just, Superintendent Carpenter and myself or our district leadership team, just to be able to test and vet. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike?
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. All right, next up is Superintendent Didway from the Clackamas County ESD to present their local service plan. Welcome, Superintendent Didway.
Yes, thank you. It's great to be here tonight and hear all the great things happening here in Estacada. Chair Rydell and board members and Superintendent Carpenter, good to see you again today.
Likewise.
We are here and happy to be here to share with you our 23-24 local service plan to serve all 10 of our component school districts in Clackamas County. And with me here tonight is John Iman, who I'll have way back there, John. So, John Iman, Len Mills, and Susan Trone, all three part of our Clackamas ESD Board of Directors, and they are here to show their support. We come annually to share this plan with you and review with you additional information, but before I even go into that, I really want to start with some specific thank yous, and the first of which would go to your superintendent, Ryan Carpenter, and just tell you what a valued member of our Clackamas Regional Superintendents Group that he is. He collaborates with us regularly, and we come together monthly for a meeting. Superintendent Carpenter has stepped up to serve as chair for that group this year and is providing some great leadership, and we all value, and I particularly value, his thoughtful partnership and leadership. I also want to say thank you to Ken Rydell for serving last year on our ESD Budget Committee, and we are hoping that you will join that group again with other district board representatives from around the county. We all want to call out Christina Irish, and she is really serving as a regional leader who makes sure her local colleagues avail themselves of statewide resources and trainings. And I would point out that we have a lot of new CFOs in the county, don't we? So that experience and service is very important. I also want to call out Mike Ware, who you've already visited with a couple times tonight, I saw. But he is a part of our newly formed advisory group and really helped plan and implement a regional summit for school safety and security. And his contributions have been greatly valued. I also want to call out Christy Cheshire, who has been a great leader and example to others in Clackamas County, specifically on cybersecurity issues. On pages 10 and 11 of the local service plan document that you received, there are a number of other Estacada School District professionals who are listed there, who are serving regularly and coming together to meet with other colleagues around the county and in groups that are facilitated by the Clackamas ESD, and we appreciate very much their involvement and contributions in that collaborative work. And then last but not least, I just want to, although I'm a little late, we're coming to you in February, but January was a School Board Appreciation Month, and I want to acknowledge your service as a community leader and just tell you how grateful we all are for your leadership, dedication, and volunteer service. We know that it is a calling, and you are making great sacrifices, and it's really appreciated, and it makes a difference in our whole community. We know that you are doing that not just in January, but throughout the year, and as a token of our appreciation, I did bring some note cards that feature the artwork of students from our Clackamas ESD 2022 Regional Art Show. So a little bit about the local service plan. There are 3 documents you have tonight. The local service plan is the one that we're asking you to review and take action on. The other 2 items are for your information. But that local service plan is something done annually, and it is required by the state. And it's developed based on the contributions and advice of those advisory groups that we shared information about. It reflects a productive partnership between the Clackamas Education Service District and all 10 of our component school districts. It also provides a comprehensive review of all the Clackamas ESD services. First of all, it addresses resolution services, and those are services that are available to all of our school districts. Those are covering very specific areas that are outlined in statute, actually, and that's in special education, technology and data, teaching and learning support, as well as district revenue that comes to you to apply to ESD services of your choice. And then there are contract and grant services, and those are things that some school districts are choosing to contract for or leaning into for support from the ESD, or participating in grants that we receive either through federal, state, or and sometimes private sources. It also covers areas like early learning, special education, technology, and teaching and learning support as well. It also has a number of student support services and district technical support that are provided through the Student Success Act funding, where we provide technical assistance to local school districts. That LSP has been approved by our Clackamas Chief Administrators Council, which includes all 10 of our superintendents and the president of Clackamas Community College. And it's also been approved by the Clackamas ESD Board of Directors. And again, it's here for your review and approval tonight. In addition, we've also provided a Estacada School District 2021-22, that's hard to rattle off, 2021-22 fiscal year review. And we also, in your print packages, included the reports for the other school districts as well, just for your information. But that's intended to provide a detailed report for your district indicating the overall cost of services that were delivered by Clackamas ESD and highlight some of the key services that we've provided in the 21-22 school year. A few highlights to share with you regarding Estacada, that more than $2.2 million in total services were provided in that year, and that's about $400,000 more than the previous year. And more than $791,000 in revenue was funneled directly back to you, and that was close to $200,000 more than the prior year. It reflects vibrant partnerships with Estacada, providing early learning evaluation services, creating new and more inclusive early learning experiences for young children, improving STEM learning opportunities, improving support for multilingual learners, providing special education services to students with very complex needs, supporting curriculum development and improvements, supporting school nurses and counselors, and helping address students' mental health needs. It also provides a range of data and technology support. And we hope that the format of that report is useful to you, and if it can be improved in any way, we would welcome your feedback about that, as we would like to make it as useful to you as possible. Also included is a little annual report, and it has the title All Rise. That's a Clackamas ESD annual report that we bring to you here tonight just for information, and that just provides through sharing of stories and other anecdotes the impact that Clackamas ESD has in our region, and we share that with you and hope it is also useful to you, and we'd welcome your feedback on that as well. And with that, I'll pause and see if you have any questions or comments.
Really appreciate getting the reports for the other districts as well, because it does, you know, when you just look at one district, you're like, is this good? Is this bad? Is it, right? What does all this mean? And so I would definitely encourage the board to look through those individual flyers, because you can see from a value standpoint of what we receive from the ESD and how the district has decided to utilize those services is very beneficial. So we appreciate that, and the transparency as well, so we can see district by district what that looks like.
And as you can see, Clackamas County has, I like to say if you can do it in Clackamas County, you can do it in Oregon, because we really do reflect the complexity of the state with really different communities and different size and different structured districts.
Any questions? Any additional questions, comments? All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate and value the partnership.
Thank you, Superintendent Didway.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to welcome back to the stage Mike Ware, everybody. Long-range facility planning.
I do appreciate the break, but yes, hello again. Long-range planning, facility planning really starts when we start the facility condition assessment. And so tonight, I would like to be able to present to the board our report that we have, so we get to have a little fun here and look at some numbers, and I'll let you just pepper me with some questions. But I'm going to start with the condition assessment. So what you have in your board backup are two reports, an executive summary and an overview summary of each of our buildings. What you see in front of you here that I'm showing you is the back-end detailed work of the facility condition assessment. I will just say real quick that we will have access to our reveal program, which I'll go into a little bit more if there's questions on what that looks like, okay? My goal is just to give you, again, some information on each of these sections, and then pause for any questions. The assets, I will say, the asset tab, there's over 1,200 assets that were assessed, so we probably will not go line by line unless you really would like to, and then I'll get some coffee and go from there. Okay, facility condition assessment. So we're looking at our column I on our capital replacement costs, and column K, which is our FCI, our facility condition index. Really assesses the building and all the assets' current condition. When you calculate your facility condition assessment, you do not calculate included site costs. And those site costs are typical fences, pavement, parking lot, ground space. We are only looking at the building itself. So in the report, it says a 0.16 at the high school. Here, it says 0.16. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. It does adjust our replacement costs because those things are not included, overall included. For the majority of today or tonight, we'll talk about with those site costs included. And we're able to change this from a 5 to 10 year if we wanted to, and we'll go into the annual CapEx in here in a second. Overall, 10-year high school, 17 million in need, 17.4.
Mike, is this table in the backup?
This table is not in the backup.
Okay, all right, that's what I was looking for.
Yes, one of the reasons why is that when we first received this information, this is a very collaborative effort with McKinstry. Our process, along with John Simpson, our facilities coordinator, Christina Irish, is to go through line by line to make sure the information is accurate. And so we've received about 6 different iterations of this already as we're making changes and updates. So that's why it's not in your backup. Elementary schools, 5 million at, 5.8 million at CRE, Clackamas River, Rivermill Elementary, 9.7 million. Our Summit Learning, Eagle Creek Charter School there, 9.0 million. District Administration, 417,000. This is over a 10-year period. And our maintenance, our transportation, 1.9 million, and our maintenance, 343,000. Going into CapEx, this is a interesting spreadsheet here that I'll be able to articulate. Over in column D, your total investment or total need over a 30-year period. At the high school, it's 31 million. Overall, I'll just go down to the bottom, 101 million over the course of 30 years. Now, that's if we were replacing and fixing, depending on what the assessment says and what the need life cycle is, per the schedule that's listed here. So in year one, on column E, the facility assessment and the report says that there's $5.4 million in need. In year two, it says 6.3. If we did that 5.4 and that 6.3, in year three, there would not be any need. This is not typical, right? We don't budget this way. We don't have $15 million in need or able to go towards the need, or 13 million. And so we're able to adjust that. And that's where the reveal program, and we can even do it in here. We can say, no, we obviously can't do that. We need to spread this out a little bit. We're going to reallocate based off life cycle, based off ranking. Because they rank these by occupant impact and by FCI score. The higher the impact, so if it impacts our students, our parents, or I'm sorry, our staff, it's going to have a higher impact. So 1 to 5, 4 and 5 are highest, that's the worst. Your FCI rating, 1 to 5, your 4s and 5s are worse. And so a lot of what the report you have in your board backup indicates that there are a lot of need. There is a lot of need. None of our buildings are in a excellent condition. And so that's why you see such a high need in these areas. The facility condition assessment is also recommending, again, in a perfect world, that the district would commit 3.3 and some change million each year to address these capital outlay projects. It's suggesting, since that there's $15 million in need in year one, that we have not been able to do it, although we've been making some significant improvements and efforts over the last 5 to 10 years. We still have a lot of need. Pause for a second to see if there are any questions on this particular.
And one of the advantages to going through this process, right, is all of the data, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we're paying for, is what is the life cycle, when do we need to replace it? And so right. I know when we talk through that, it's a chunk of money, but that's what allows us to be able to effectively plan for life cycles and spread those dollars out as we can do those. So that's as we talked about, again, it's a big dollar amount, but when you start digging into all the details, it's money well spent when it really helps us be prepared and plan ahead instead of just fixing what breaks.
Correct.
So those two columns are there if you follow a cycle. I recall when we looked at this a few years ago, there was roughly 22 million in work to do to fix what's broke, or was that also a life cycle thing? Or I thought it was fix what's broke.
From the last report, if I recall correctly, it's a little bit of both, and it's very similar to here. But now this report is mainly replace. There are very
when it breaks, not that it's broken.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, you can see here, and this is the asset tab here. Column W and column K is industry remaining life, so based off industry standards, and then observed. So if we have a boiler that's past IRL, but we've been maintaining, we've been servicing, it may have a longer observed life, which affects when we would actually make this change or do the CapEx. And so you'll see a lot of our, and we have a graph here to give you an indication of the average of our basically our asset life, as well as impact to occupant and asset condition impact. And really briefly here, there's some cells that are hidden, but these are all the assets that were evaluated through the few-day process, and as well as we work with McKinstry on making updates. Very similar to the previous reports that you've all seen in the past years. There's notes. We have cost estimates based off their formulas and their cost estimator.
Assume later on, we see more than HVAC. Is that just the first thing on the list?
What I'll say after reviewing this, this report, it's very similar to the last one. A lot of behind-the-scenes work. There's a lot of systems of our roofing, our HVAC, our electrical, our plumbing that are still being called out that need to be replaced. So there is some different new things that we have identified, but it's very similar to what we saw, just new numbers, unfortunately, higher numbers.
I don't know if this is the time to bring this up, but on page 6 of the board book, that copy that we received, something caught my eye, and it said the first year, well, it says that 3.51 million a year over 30 years, and then it says the first year would be 17.8 million, indicates that we have not been able to keep up with updating and replacing the suggested 3.51 million per year, and has an extraordinary amount of deferred maintenance. You know, I learned a long time ago, you either pay me now or you pay me a whole heck of a lot more later.
Correct.
Can you give me an idea why we haven't, or have we been keeping up? And if so, how?
Yeah, I can speak to my time with the district, which is about 4 years. We've made an intentional effort to use capital funds and other resources to start picking off our last FCA. And the fact that we've been able to, I believe it's about $5.4 million in need that we've been able to address. Prior to my tenure, I might lean on Superintendent Carpenter on a number of the deferred maintenance needs. But, you know, we are trying to be good fiscal stewards of our taxpayer money, understanding that capital improvement has been built up over the number of years, and we're trying to do our best to identify the highest need. And the reality is, if a full HVAC system or a new roof is going to be over $1 million, that's a hard decision to make, and it takes us all to evaluate whether we can afford it and what resources we're going to take it from.
Well, I really appreciate what you were saying about, you know, you have a standard timeline that their product is, or maintenance needs to be done. But if you continue to stay on a maintenance program, you can extend that life for quite a while. And I really appreciate you bringing that up.
I will move along. Here is just, again, it's a pivot chart, and this is just kind of nerdy stuff, if you will, but our average observed remaining life is 8.4 years. Average condition is a 3.44 out of a 5. Sum of estimated replacement costs, $59 million, and this is by school. And so each of these tabs, we can go by school, we can go by asset system. If we're looking at, we'll just do site totals for fun. That includes fences, gates, parking lots, special building systems. What this is saying is that this is what we would need to allocate or contribute to for a full replacement when they're due, all right?
Mike, can we go back just a step, a couple slides there? You had Clackamas River up there, 9.8 million. It was the running total. And then the score we had was you said average of 3.4, so it was
okay, let me go back to the by school. There you go.
There you go.
Yep. There we go. Average.
Blow it up a little bit for us.
Okay, so that's a 5-point scale there. So 3.5 on a 5-point scale.
Yeah, correct.
So that's our newest building, built 2002-ish, 3-ish, somewhere in there. And we have $9.8 million of deferred maintenance, is what we're saying?
It's deferred maintenance, and it's also identifying how the foundation was not done correctly, as well as different roofing system issues. Now, we've gone through the last few years and done some replacement of roofing, but in their assessment, and we can look at it, it's a lot of it's HVAC.
But that, just before you move off that screen, so what that says is there's 167 total assets in that building.
Yep.
And of those 167 assets, the average life remaining is 7.62 years.
Correct.
And to replace all of those when they go is 9.8 million.
Correct.
So that's to replace every asset that is going to expire in the next 7.62 years.
Correct, within their average replacement life.
right.
You're saying that correctly, yes.
When
So,
when you use the word deferred maintenance, you know, some people might hear that and say you chose not to fix something.
yeah, I try not to
But
use that word.
we, as a board, have been saving all the years I've been on to tackle these things.
Yes.
And it's an impossible number to keep up with.
Yes.
So I wanted to be clear about that.
Thank you.
Not that you weren't attempting to take care of these things, that you just couldn't always get to all of them. And they had to be prioritized.
Yes.
Clearing that up.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it just, that number is pretty astonishing, especially that you compare it to 2 lines down to the Escada High School, that's the building we're sitting in currently. It has a higher asset condition, which I find really hard to believe. Twice the estimated replacement cost, which I find really hard to believe.
But there's double the number of assets. Almost double, yeah, because it goes from 167 assets to 339 assets.
But that means.
No, but that 18 million, I think it is, should be 90 million.
Right.
Mike, I wouldn't mind one more Zoom on that.
Per our conversation.
This might be.
Later, yeah.
Be-
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Especially because there's more assets.
Well, I'm just kind of stating the numbers here. I'm not trying to point the finger or scrutinize anybody's data, but it just seems weird that Clackamas River, which is 42 years newer, is a lesser building, and we've put quite a bit of work into it recently, as far as the roof goes. And if you walked into it, you'd say, oh, this is a new school.
Yeah.
When you walk into this, you don't have that same thought.
Experience.
Yes, thank you. So it's just interesting, this is the first time seeing this, Mike, so I'm, again, just kind of thinking out loud, and I apologize to everybody that's watching on YouTube, all 3 of you. So,
It's more than that.
I was
It's
gonna say, probably a
double
few more.
digits.
double
All right.
digits, 99.
I will say again, as I mentioned before, this is, this process, before we get to the this obviously starts our long-range facility planning. This will help us gear up and develop a package based off what the group decides to do. Before the 21st, you know, between the day we receive this and then, we still need to keep going through and making sure that the data looks right. It's a process, it's a collaborative process, and so far we've been very successful. But things that you're identifying are things that we're looking at and making sure that it looks accurate, and it is accurate.
I mean, and it's just addressing, like, very specific
Yes.
issues within each building, not the holistic, like.
Correct.
It's not addressing like what we would want out of the building, right?
Right, to update it to the
correct.
current.
This is just
Just to
replace
function.
existing
Replace
or
it.
repair existing.
Right.
And again, where the long-range facility planning team comes into play, and their role is to deciding what does that future look like for our district, for our buildings, and replacing the systems and modernizing for today's learner and today's employee.
May I ask what wire glass is?
Yes, wire glass is, if I'm pointing over at this door,
Yeah.
you see this glass that has wire in between, it's a mesh.
And
It's-
why is that bad?
It's hard to break. And so, and in terms of life safety, if we had to break it, and it's, I believe, not out of compliance, but it's no longer something that industry standards.
I thought maybe it was like a fire hazard or something. I don't know. I didn't know
Yeah.
what it was, and it was like mentioned in every single
Yeah.
building, so I was just curious what the,
It's a dated system to improve.
kind of lack of safety or something?
Yeah.
Or-
Yep. So for not letting the glass shatter if it were to break, but it's harder to break if you needed to break it, and it creates issues for life safety.
Thank you.
I'm going to skip over to cumulative CapEx. Okay. This is over a 30-year period with a 5% escalation over the next couple of years and then moving to a 3.5. What this is suggesting, what this report or this visual is giving you is that the Estacada School District has $15.8 million in need in 2022. If we did nothing, if we had no investment into our assets to replace, in 2023, it would be 29 million, because there's 15 million in 2022, there's 13 million in 2023. You add those together, you add the 5%, comes out to be 29 million. As you see, over the next couple of years, it's not such a big gap or a big increase. If you recall, if we maintain what we were doing, or that 3.8 million, or sufficing all the needs, there's zero need during those couple of years. So then there's just adding that 5% inflation cost.
So as that moves on out like 10, 15 years, is there another big benchmark at like year 15 that says?
Yeah, you can see here, 25, 26 seems to be okay. It looks like between 30
there it is,
and
31.
31, there's a pretty big jump.
And here's 32.
Yeah, I mean, there's 6 million more at the high school alone. And 6 million at the next one. Increase.
I'll leave it at that and let see if there's any more questions. And
Mike, somewhere on there is what it would cost today to replace, like, let's say, for example, the high school.
Yeah.
If it were the exact same footprint, exact same square footage, what would that number be?
And that's on page 12 of the executive summary in our board book.
yeah, it's in your board backup. So the high school, let me just flip it because it's not on this report.
I can tell you, I've got it up.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
89,636.
So to completely replace
That, if that's
the square footage of
current
this high
building
school.
replacement cost, that's the one we're talking about, Mike.
Let's build one the same size or knock this one down and put one right here.
Yes.
Well,
Seems really low,
Yeah, it's
Yes.
at 590
incredibly low.
a square foot is what they're estimating.
That counts
Right here.
demoing this whole thing.
I don't know if it counts, no.
Probably
I
not
don't
the
think
demo.
so.
Not
I think
demoing,
it's
just
just
building a
building a
new
new
one.
You're a little closer now.
Yeah.
Your replacement value, yeah, it's building a new one.
If you had a,
If you're demoing,
if you had
yeah,
a back 20 that was barren,
Yes.
yeah, you have free 20 acres back there, yes. That, to answer your question.
Yeah.
Is that the insurance value, or is that a true build?
It's based off of this square footage number here.
True build.
True value.
those look like actuals that I've seen on some new schools that have gone up in the last couple of years in the state.
And well, these are hard costs, I don't include any soft costs,
Such as.
we get in the,
Such as,
engineering,
yeah, okay.
architectural.
and in the summary, it gives square footage costs for each building
Yes.
separate, so, and that's on the same page as, it's my page 10, but
Has anybody seen a nice high school lately that we could just steal their plans and save on the soft costs?
Silverton.
Silverton.
Silverton's great.
Seaside
Seaside's
wasn't
great.
bad. I really liked
Sisters,
it.
very nice. Not,
Sisters is really nice.
yeah, and those are all not fancy, they're just humble, updated, upgraded facilities for learning.
Okay,
So Mike, I imagine Feb 21st will really dig in. You don't want us to go all
We're
the way
gonna,
through,
yeah,
right?
we're gonna have both of these systems in place in terms of this workbook, but also the reveal program. We had our first view of it yesterday, and very robust, and it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Don't, Ben.
Yes,
Have a lot of fun.
I'm excited.
thank you.
all right. Thank you, Mike, and I don't think you're back on the agenda later, but we'll see. Oh, you could be.
I could be.
In the voting, so
I think
don't go
we're-
too far.
We're next for, what's the next one?
Next up is the
Polling.
polling with
Okay.
Maggie Simich from Patinkin.
Away, Meg.
Anybody need water?
Share my
Take one.
screen.
Take water.
There's Sprite,
All right.
Ben.
There we go. You guys should all be seeing my screen now.
Yep, we got it.
So I'm Maggie Simich. I'm a partner of Patinkin Research Strategies. We're a public opinion research firm. Among other things, we do a lot of work with school districts such as yourselves, assessing perceptions of school districts and particularly potential tax measures. So with that, I'm going to jump in. Unfortunately, these are kind of two items in a row that are going to be a lot of numbers being thrown at you fairly quickly. So starting out with methodology. So we conducted a survey of 400 likely voters in the Estacada School District. Interviews were conducted via telephone using professional interviewers. We used a voter file sample, and then the poll universe was actually diminished to reflect a likely May 2024 electorate. So this is not representative of every single community member in Estacada School District. This is just representative of likely 2024 registered likely voters. This is a scientific poll. We were in the field January 30th through February 1st. The margin of error for this survey is going to be plus or minus 4.9 percentage points. Anytime I'm talking about subgroups, so older voters, younger voters, anything like that, the margin of error is going to vary and be higher because we just have fewer interviews behind each cell. To that end, younger and older is an arbitrary break at age 50. We also make some comparisons to a previous data set that was conducted between September 27th and October 3rd, 2021. That was a survey of N equals 400 likely November 2022 voters in the district. So starting out with the issue landscape. This is a question that we've asked repeatedly over time. So to the best of your knowledge, how would you describe the condition of school buildings in the school district? Would you say that they're in very good, good, poor, or very poor condition? Looking now at a May 2024 electorate, we have an increase in the number of voters who are just frankly unaware of the condition of school facilities. The reason we look at this question repeatedly over time is because we see in this district and in many districts that this correlates pretty strongly to willingness to support a bond. So amongst those who have a positive perception of school facilities, so they think that school facilities are in great condition, 27% are voting yes on a bond, 58% are voting no, 15% are undecided. Amongst those who are voting no on the bond, much different perception. So we definitely see this strong correlation between understanding of school facilities and how that correlates to willingness to support a bond. And with this now high proportion of voters who are just unsure about district facilities, we just see a need to educate those voters about sort of what's going on within the school buildings, knowing that if we can make them understand that facilities are not in great condition, we can build willingness to vote yes on a bond. We also have asked this question about how satisfied voters are with the way that the district spends taxpayer dollars. We see satisfaction down as compared to 2021. Though again, I want to note that this is a slightly different universe of people. So the previous survey in 2021 was looking at likely November 2022 voters. We're now looking at May 2024 voters. Overall, a May electorate is going to be older. It's going to be a lot more partisan. So slightly different universe of voters. The good news is that it's not that voters are now unsatisfied with district spending. It's that, again, we now have this cohort of voters who are just unable to weigh in either way. So we just have an increase in that don't know category over that interval. So now getting into the bond itself. So these are some viability benchmarks. These are not like set in stone benchmarks. These are just rough benchmarks that we use internally to understand how bonds are performing in polling. Polls are a snapshot in time. Obviously, February of 2023 is a pretty far way out from May of 2024. So we can be a little bit more loose with these benchmarks than we might be if you guys were planning on going out for a bond in May. But overall, we like to see overall support in the mid-50s or higher. We like to see intensity of support, so those voters who start out voting yes strongly around 30% or higher. And they like to see muted strong opposition around 25% or less. And the reason for that is because particularly when we're dealing with tax increases, if voters are undecided, they're inevitably more likely to break no than yes. It's gonna be harder to persuade them. So we try to sort of build in a cushion in sort of points 1 and 2 accordingly. We start out as an exercise testing mocked up bond language. We know that sort of bond ballot language is a little bit convoluted. It's really particular. So this is bonds to increase safety, address overcrowding, construct, repair schools, facilities. Shall district repair, construct facilities, address overcrowded classrooms, increase safety, issue $60 million in general obligation bonds, audits required. With that mocked up bound language, the yes vote gets to 39%, the no vote at 37%, and undecided is at 26%. We have divided intensity of feeling, with 18% say they starting out voting yes strongly and 18% starting out voting no strongly. I want to note that we conducted, again, that survey in October of 2021. The yes vote was in a similar position in that survey. We actually saw more significant opposition in that survey. So in that October 2021 survey, we had 46% of voters who said they were voting no. We're now at 37%. So we have seen sort of a corresponding decrease in opposition over that same time. So obviously some work to be done in terms of that yes vote, sort of moving voters out of that don't know category into that yes column. But the good news is opposition to the bond is pretty muted, which again is something we look for in terms of bond viability. Diving a little bit into the demographic breaks, we see breaks based on age, educational attainment, and home ownership status. So age, we see a big gap with younger voters, much more supportive of the bond than older voters. We do see a decent portion of younger voters in a May 2024 election, so that's good to see. We also see college educated voters more supportive of a bond than non-college educated voters, and then renters more supportive of a bond than homeowners, which is a trend that we typically see because for whatever reason, renters don't believe that property taxes affect them. Looking at some other demographic information, we definitely see that the bond benefits from a high turnout election. Regionally speaking, we do better in the South compared to the North. So in the southern portion of the district is defined by zip code. The bond is up by 4 points. It's down by 9 in the North portion. We asked a question about how voters receive information about the schools. Those who are getting their information directly from the schools, so those folks who are like actually tuned into what's happening, incredibly supportive of the bond. That's a 46-point margin. Those who get their information from local TV news, the bond's down by 6. And then those who just sort of get their information from word of mouth, down by double digits. I also want to call out the break we see based on how much of a relationship people have personally to the schools. So current district parents, enormously supportive, 74% voting yes, 19% voting no. So that's a 55-point margin there amongst current district parents. When we get into past and future district parents, so that's a combination of voters who have previously had students go through the Estacada School District, or people who anticipate that in the future they will have children that will attend Estacada schools, the bond's down by just 6 points. And then you have this portion of the electorate that has just frankly no relationship to the schools whatsoever. So they do not have children in schools currently. They have never had them. They don't anticipate having them attend schools in the future. And the bond is down most significantly amongst that group. That's also presumably a group that needs a significant amount of education about district facilities and sort of what that need is there. We asked an open-ended question after that bond language to get a sense of sort of what's driving the yes vote and the no vote respectively. So we have a majority of those voters who offer kind of generic support, either that they generically support education, children, or that they just generically support the school district and believe that it's in need of funding. We previously asked an open-ended question that had sort of more specific details as to that, but this is just showing that we have this sort of cohort of yes voters who are just generally supportive of the schools, and that's really what is driving a yes vote right now. No voters, on the other hand, and this is something we're seeing in other districts as well right now, are super focused on the timing and then just the cost of a bond. So you have 30% of no voters who say now isn't the right time. The good news for those voters is that now is not May 2024, so there is some time for a little bit of education in that interim and perhaps a little bit of shift in economics. We have 21% of voters who say that they just can't afford any new taxes, and then 20% who believe that that $60 million price tag is just simply too high. And again, these are percentages of no voters. So we then do an exercise, so knowing that that bond language is kind of convoluted legalese, we then do an exercise where we do sort of an in English, plain language explanation of what the bond will pay for, and then the price per thousand associated with the bond. So as voters learn more about the bond, both the projects that would be included sort of explained plainly, as well as the price per thousand, we see kind of similar increases in support and opposition. So it moves to 43, 41 with 15% undecided. We then did a price sensitivity exercise where we tested 3 potential price points for the bond. It's a really carefully designed exercise where we start with the highest potential project or bond package. We describe all of the projects that would be addressed as well as the price point. We then drop down to the second highest. We explain what will and will not be paid for with that bond level and the associated cost, and then we drop down again. So in this exercise, we did a $109 million bond, a $60 million bond, and then a $39 million bond, which would be a renewal. And notably, there is not a massive difference between like the highest $109 million bond and the renewal. Sometimes we see huge variance in districts, and right now we're not seeing a huge variance between those. And the reason is we see sort of a difference in partisanship. We see some partisan shifts between those 2 price points. So at that $109 million bond, you get really high yes vote amongst Democrats. As we drop to the lowest vote, support amongst sort of that left portion of the electorate starts to drop a little bit, and you start to bring on a cohort of Republicans from sort of the right. It's worth noting that district parents are equally supportive of the bond sort of across these 3 price points, which is just something I wanted to flag. So now getting into sort of the bond aspects and how voters feel about those. So the top tier, the most popular projects really focus on health and safety. So talking about fire safety improvements, removing asbestos, rusty piping, leaky roofs, inefficient boiler systems, and the HVAC repairs that ensure healthier airs in classrooms, and then cameras and security features. The sort of top tier items are super laser focused on these health and safety aspects of the schools. Second tier items, and again, these are not unpopular, they're just not quite as popular as that top tier, start to get into a little bit more of the more detailed benefits of these improvements. So talking about efficiencies that are created by upgrading windows and insulation, the fact that it will improve the educational experience for students by giving them better access to technology, modern spaces that meet learning needs, accessibility, and then seismic safety and air conditioning. So it's worth noting that at the bottom here, we have that add air conditioning systems to school, whereas when we frame it in this previous slide as replacing inefficient boilers with modern HVAC systems that save taxpayer dollars and filtration systems, it's far more popular. So voters have a lot more support for sort of the basics. So when we talk about things as, you know, replacing boilers with HVAC systems as opposed to talking about, you know, adding air conditioning, it's a more popular proposal. And then the third tier items, again, these are not necessarily unpopular. You still have almost half of voters who say that they support each of these. They talk about mental health, a potential new high school to accommodate future growth, and then job training opportunities, particularly working in partnership with Clackamas Community College. So in addition to looking at sort of those overall support and opposition numbers, we also look at regression modeling, which is sort of big data analysis that allows us to see sort of under the data, what's moving voters towards a yes vote or a no vote. And the two items that drive a yes vote that are worth noting are the ADA upgrades, and then again, that replacing inefficient boiler systems with modern HVAC systems that save taxpayer dollars and filtration systems that ensure healthier air is circulated to classrooms. So while accessibility, this first item was in that top tier, this ADA accessibility item was, in that second tier, but we see that under the data that does drive support for the bond. We then did an exercise where we tested two potential options for the high school. So in a split sample simulation, we talked about potentially building a new high school as opposed to building an elementary school. So build a new high school to address future growth, freeing up space throughout the system to address severe overcrowding at the elementary level, versus just building a new elementary school in order to address severe overcrowding at the elementary school. Overall, there's a slight preference for the new high school. When we look under the data, that preference is even stronger when we look at sort of two critical subgroups, so district parents, and then also older voters who make up the majority, a significant portion of a likely electorate. We then did an exercise where we tested a series of trait items to see how descriptive voters felt that they were of the bond sort of after we've walked them through all of the price points, all of the potential projects. And after that exercise, we have majorities who believe that the bond will increase student and staff safety, will help improve their local economy, and is accountable to taxpayers. We then have items that are sort of right at this 50% mark. So ensuring access to modern classrooms, will create a positive legacy for our children and grandchildren, address problems now so they don't cost more later, and then necessary. Again, still you have half of the electorate who say those are descriptive, but we just have these top three items that are seen as most descriptive of the bond after we've sort of walked voters through all the nuts and bolts of it. We then again look at regression modeling with those trait items, and the three trait items that appear in regression modeling as drivers of support of the bond are a perception that the bond is necessary. Again, thinking back to that first slide and perceptions of district facilities, it's really important that particularly those voters that are not engaged right now, they're not in the buildings, they don't have students in the buildings, they don't know what's going on, that they understand the need behind these repairs, that the bond is accountable to taxpayers, that's really important. And then lastly, that it increases student and staff safety. And that's, a finding that dovetails with the finding that all of those sort of health and safety items are top of priority for voters. It's really important that we emphasize the sort of health and safety aspects of this bond. So, these are sort of critical items throughout the course of an education and campaign as we sort of gear up towards May 2024. So in addition to those positive trait items, we also test a series of negative trait items. And we definitely see that there's a cost component here where there's, voters are concerned about the cost of the bond. So a plurality believe that the bond will put a strain on seniors and struggling families living on a fixed income. We also have a plurality who believe that the bond is something that they can't afford right now. And then there's also a concern that the bond will lead to more wasteful government spending. So we have to be sensitive to the cost of the bond. And then also to this last point, really emphasizing the accountability of the bond and sort of the fiscal responsibility is also going to be pretty critical. Over the course of the survey, we see support for the bond increase to sort of just under that 50% mark, so to 49% yes, 41% no, 11% undecided. So to be clear, that first ask was
Election would be more advantageous for us than a May election based on voter turnout. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's a good question. Let me jump to another.
Because I think that the makeup of voters is more beneficial maybe in a May election, but those two just didn't connect with me as you were going through it.
Yeah, so a May electorate is gonna just be more partisan than a November electorate. It's also gonna have fewer younger voters, which also translates to parents. So you could see that massive margin amongst voters under age 50, where we're at 41 points, and whereas we're at -16 of voters over age 50. There are just gonna be a lot older voters. The lower turnout an election is, older voters tend to be super voters who turn out no matter what.
Right.
And similarly, when we're looking at current parents versus those who either are former parents or have no relationship to the school, we would expect there to be more current district parents in a higher turnout election.
Okay. Do we know, obviously support by parents is significant, right? Mid-70s realistically. Do we have the data of what percentage of our registered voters in our school district are current parents?
That's a great question. So
And all three of those breakdowns, right? The current parents, the previous parents, and the non-affiliated.
Yeah, so now I don't have for voters as a whole, but I do have based on our May 2024 electorate. In a likely May 2024 electorate, based on this data set, about 24% will be current parents, 48% will be previous or future parents, and I want to note that the bulk of those are previous, with very few future parents, and then 25% will be folks who have never had any relationship to the schools.
But that information obviously is based on who was willing to take the survey, who, that portion of that in there as well, right?
Yeah, so it's based on a self-report question that we had as a demographic question at the end of the survey. We obviously weighted the survey by other demographic measures that are knowable as to what that electorate will look like. We don't have, it's not a data point available on the voter file, whether or not someone has children in the investigative school district. So yes, we're relying on self-report and the other measures that we use to weight this data set.
Okay. Do you know of any way we could find those percentages out there in the world of super secret information hidden somewhere?
That's a great question. I don't know that there is a way to do that.
Let's see, Maggie. I see Maggie's anxiously
Maggie.
wanting to come on up. Our Maggie. Well, you're both our Maggies today, but our
Yes.
resident Maggie.
I'll speak briefly to this. While this is not an exact science, we did pull our voter files in Estacada School District boundaries. We have over 11,000 voters, and we compared it with the district families in our student SIS system, Power School. And so we looked at which names match up, and we saw, this is rough, we could get you more exact numbers. We saw what looked like a little over 1,000 voter files for district families. So if we have approximately 11,000 voters registered, and we have over 1,000 families registered.
So it's 10% roughly. And again, not holding you to the number, but
Maybe,
just,
maybe a little bit more, but we can get rough numbers of that will, I think, assist us in knowing where our ballpark is.
and the only reason I bring it up is that when we see that support, right, the first thing we can think of is, gosh, we just need to make sure that the parents are voting. But if the parents only represent 10% of the voting population, they're not going to be able to carry that vote for us. So that's not, at least in my opinion, but there's people way smarter than me looking at these numbers.
Yeah, the tough thing I'll say is that, absolutely, that should be a priority, turning out as many parents as possible in almost any bond effort. That would be my recommendation. The tricky thing is we're not going to stop the seniors who have no relationship to the school from turning out and also voting. They are super voters who will turn out no matter what. So you can move that number on the margins, but that still doesn't influence the number of older voters who are going to turn out.
Right, okay,
Which is just a huge portion of the electorate.
yeah, okay.
I think this goes to Ken's question, but maybe this is a repeat of what you just asked, but breaking down those zip codes even further or finding a heat map of maybe even our zones that we support, is there any way to do that?
So we can. It's a little tricky because as we get into smaller and smaller regions, the quality of data starts to diminish. So we don't want to break it up too tiny. But this data set belongs to you all, and we can definitely slice and dice it as necessary.
That makes sense. So follow up on that. So is there N size attached to like the zip code numbers of the 9022, I'm sorry, the 22 and the 23?
Yes.
I caught you
So,
mid-cough, sorry about that.
It's okay. 97022 makes up 24% of the electorate, and 97023 is 74%.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
I thought it was kind of interesting to see the pretty consistent support, consistent numbers across all three price points. I thought that was kind of an interesting, and even if in the middle price point even was weaker.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was just really surprising, and I feel like there's just so much to unpack in this, and I'm very encouraged by these results personally. I know they aren't great, but it's not horrible. And I'm excited to see some higher support for a potential high school. So,
the other interesting thing, and I know this doesn't come out in the data, but the amount of don't know is really shocking.
yeah, it's really high.
Especially since this isn't the first time we polled, right? We polled multiple times over the last, 6 years. So I don't know if that is new residents to
That's
the
what we
area.
think.
Would be my guess, and even some of those that maybe don't have school-age kids yet, so don't have the connection, and so they truly just don't know. So I'd be interested to see how we can cut that information up a little bit, but that's for a different workshop, I'm thinking.
As to Kata Maggie, if I can call you that tonight, you said 11,000 voters. Is that projected voter turnout, or is that 11,000 registered voters and a voter turnout of like 74%?
That is registered voters. We can see in the voter files how many times in the past few years those people have voted. We can't see how they vote, but how frequent they vote. So we can get somewhat close to figuring out who's more likely to vote, but Patinkin is able to really hone in on our most likely voters. But 11,000 is
Just
everyone. They registered and they may have never voted before.
Patinkin, Maggie, do you have an idea of what a general election 2024 will be? Primary? General. May election will be what's a reasonable turnout?
That's a great question. I believe we targeted somewhere around 51%, but that's off the top of my head, so don't quote me on that. I'd have to go back and look at our specs, but it's sort of a mid-range turnout. So the X factor I will note is that we are really using our crystal balls here in terms of that turnout, because there are a lot of factors that go into turnout that we just don't know right now. So we don't know what the presidential primaries are going to look like. We don't know what the primaries at the congressional level are going to look like. We don't know what ballot measures are going to be on the potential May ballot at a statewide level. And those have huge impacts on sort of what that range of turnout looks like. So we're really using our roughest best guess right now. But I believe, if I believe correctly, it's sort of around that 50% mark.
Okay, thank you.
More questions?
What are the next steps?
Great question.
For Estakita Maggie, or any Maggie who wants the answer.
I think next steps, and then I'll let other Maggie speak on that. I think next steps from what I see is going through our long-range planning process to allow our community to look at the needs that Mike was able to present through our FCA, get our community more familiar with the needs, again, address that don't know, and do just a really broad, not even talking bond, but just education campaign on the needs that exist in our schools. And then through that long-range process, we'll be able to build a bond package based on the needs, and then we can poll again and see, is this bond package popular? Are we getting closer? Other Maggie, if there's anything you'd like to add.
No, I think that's exactly right, which is this is really, this is the stage where it's really all about just sort of educating voters on what the need is in the buildings, particularly focusing on the items that we now know are the most popular needs. And just really making sure that those voters who are just not tuned in are getting that information. And I will just confirm that I did just double check, and it was, we did project a 50% turnout in May 2024.
Just while you're still here, it looked like buildings and structures and windows and HVAC was like the third most important thing, right? In the strong yeses? Or was that in like the soft no's? Was that just the
No, that was
strong
some of the
yes?
yeses, yeah.
More important was just supporting kids, teachers,
Yes,
education.
because they believe in schools.
And they're going to be the ones that vote yes, almost.
So you're talking about the reasons why yes voters are voting yes?
Health and safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yes voters are really driven by like either general support for education or teacher or kids, or just a general support for Estacada schools, or the idea that the schools in a general way need it. That said, when we dive into the specific bond projects, it's like really the core health and safety upgrades that are most popular overall, not just amongst those initial yes voters.
One last thought for me right now. One of the slides you said there was 7% support. It was for capacity issues. And in Estacada, we're facing a capacity issue pretty extensively. Are you noticing that on other polling, that doesn't poll well?
That really varies from place to place, whether or not overcrowding is compelling to voters. And again, it's not that overcrowding was not compelling to voters. It's, you know, it's not as if we had a majority who are opposed to the idea of reducing overcrowding. Number one, you know, when we talk about reducing overcrowding, I think that voters know that that's a much bigger project than repairing a roof or, you know, replacing an HVAC system. But we are seeing that sort of in the current economic climate, it's really the most basic bond projects that voters are most supportive of. It's like these really basic help, like making sure that schools are safe for students. That sort of like the most basic needs are met that are most compelling, and sort of the what are seen as the extras, or you know, to overcrowding, what are seen as potentially like future problems are just not as high priorities right now.
Thank you.
All right, more questions? Okay. Both Maggies, thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it. Thanks for all the information that we need to digest. So, Maggie Simich, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you.
Great job.
May.
Are you back?
No, I'm just closing out.
So you're going after
Sorry. Just wanna-
All right, so on to
But if we
item
could get
G is
those 1,000
discussion.
people to come out no matter what. Makes a lot more sense to do it.
And we have budget calendar on the discussion topics for tonight. Thank you, Mike. This goes to you, right?
Yes,
All right,
that'll
Christina,
come
take
to
it away.
me. I have placed in front of you a proposed budget calendar for the 2023-24. Just going over it, some of the highlights. The blue are the advertisements, when I would be required to post my advertisements. I'm sorry?
No, never mind, I'll talk to you later.
Okay. And then you'll see that the bolded are the meetings that the board and the budget committee would be attending. I have a couple of budget meetings that have asterisks on them. Let me go a little bit more into it. So you'll see April 12th is the Budget 101. That's our workshop that we do with the board and the budget meeting. Proposing that we have the budget completed and available on May 3rd. Our first official budget meeting will be May 10th, prior to the board meeting. The second, and these are the asterisks because these are not board meetings, but we do need to have 2 additional dates for the budget and the board for the budget committee to discuss the budget and approve it. So I have proposed 2 dates. Keep in mind, in May, we also do have our week that we are closed. So proposing, and this is where the discussion comes in. I know athletics, and so bringing this to the board and hoping you can discuss it and seeing if there's any conflicts with these days, and then hoping to bring back to the board in March to approve the budget calendar. And then in June, prior to the June board meeting, we will have, or during the June board meeting, we'll have our budget hearing to adopt the budget.
So, and again, just as a reminder, those 2 asterisk dates are if needed. We could technically approve the budget in that first meeting. We don't typically do that because we take time to read it and understand it. And just to clarify, we're all on the budget committee. So even though it's not a board meeting night, we will all be here. So, so plan on that.
And just a quick update on the budget committee. I did have 3 open positions. I did receive 2 applications for renewal, so I do only have 1 opening that I will be publicizing here shortly, once I get the more official calendar.
Awesome.
And
What week is the closed week?
I'm sorry?
the week before that,
The week between May 10th and May 24th.
Oh, okay.
17th.
Yeah, the second week.
and if, with the board's permission, I'll likely work in the interim, probably with probably Chair Rydell and maybe Director Johnston on the dates, because they're contingent upon, the reason why we have these in asterisks is our board is busy in the springtime, and there are certain days that are busier than other days, and so I wanted to, that's why we put it there, so we can lock a date down once we know our spring schedules better.
Okay. Any questions on the calendar at this time? All right, and I think I have a committee member for you too, so,
Very nice.
unless they're already on your list, so.
All right.
we'll see.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. On to item H, hearing of citizens for action items only. None. On to item I, action items. The consent agenda includes a package of 1 or more items to be voted on as a unit. However, if any board member is not in favor of 1 or more agenda items and prefers to take separate action, a request to the chair anytime prior to the vote will remove that item for a separate vote. So we are on to I1. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Chair Rydell, I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Can I just say something real quick about it?
Yeah.
So I only noticed one name on there, I know there's many others, but I've had the pleasure of working with Debbie McKay for a long time and seeing that resignation. She's worked in the district for a while too. So it's great. I have great issues going on to something else, but I was glad to work with her while I did.
Yeah, she has been a pleasure to work with in this district, and her years of service here were celebrated.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, raise your right hand.
Motion carries.
On to item J for the ESD local service plan approval.
Chair Rydell, I move to approve the Clackamas ESD local service plan as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I guess I was a little confused on, so we have our numbers from 21, 22, and then we have this book from 23, 24. Are there numbers with 20?
Well, 22, 23, you mean?
Well, this says 23, 24, but I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, this is for next year.
Oh, got it, yes.
The
So we
plan for
don't
next
One
year.
was actuals from last year. and
Actuals from
one
last
is-
year, budgeted for next year.
Yeah, because we already approved this year's last year
Yeah.
okay.
at this time last
So I guess
year.
I guess maybe I'm confused on,
What you're not seeing is where we currently are with the
Yeah.
services that we have for the
Yeah.
current year, is what you
Yeah.
don't see.
right, okay, but so we're reviewing and approving proposal for next,
Correct.
okay.
Yep, and I can tell you, in general, it's pretty status quo
Standard,
this
yeah.
year from what it is last year. We may see an increase in some out-of-district placements coming soon, but that's going to ebb and flow.
There's where there's a year gap in there, though.
Yeah, that's why I was
Or
like,
it
I'm like, I
is.
just
It
feel
is.
like something's
Oh.
missing, but I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But that's just because we're in mid-year.
Yeah.
And it's not like you
Makes
brought
sense.
a mid-year
Yep.
update. Okay.
But we could pull what we approved this time last year, and that would show current where we're at.
That's true.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any other questions?
One note, for Clackamas ESD. There's a, staff person from Estacada School District on here that's been listed with the wrong last name 2 years in a row. It's the, spouse of our
It's the
chairman.
vice principal at the high school.
Can we get that corrected?
An extra L, yeah.
Oh, nice.
That was last year too.
Make
wasn't
another comment that there's a other individual that's on there multiple times doing many
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah.
They-
Yeah.
So she's doing good work there, obviously.
it? All right,
Nothing else, Chair.
thank you, Vice Chair. All right, good on that. So all in favor of item J, raise your right hand.
Motion carries.
On to item K, motion to purchase 2 new buses.
Chair Rydell, I move to approve the purchase of 2 new passenger Bluebird buses for $237,643.50 for the Estacada School District Transportation Fleet.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, so I'll start the discussion off again. This goes back to an amount of time where we needed to replace our bus fleet. So back then, as we started to set budgets, we committed to buying 2 buses a year to make that date so that we were able to continue to bus our students as we had to sunset those older buses. So that's in line with our standard practice over the last 5 years.
I think we started at my first year as superintendent, so,
Okay,
yep,
so,
5 years.
So this is not a new expenditure, not a new cost. It's been one that we've been planning on every 2 years. So that's where I'll start the discussion. So any other discussion on that?
I will just piggyback on that, as we talk about the school district buildings and deferred maintenance and these things, and I think part of the problem with deferred maintenance in government, and why it's talked about, is it's one of those things that's easily chopped out of the budget. So when times get tight, you stop doing things that you should probably do on a regular basis, and these buses is very much in that same conversation. Times got tight, call it 10 years ago for conversation's sake. We did different things with leases, and we got off of our continual 2 buses a year to reinforce the fleet, add to the fleet, and update the fleet. And so, as a school board, I'm gonna pat ourselves on the back for holding strong to, we're gonna do this every year, because there's a EPA mandate of some sort that says we can't have buses after 2025 that don't have DPF and all this other diesel stuff. So, long story short, good job, Estacada School Board, for standing strong on this, and we are trying to do this with our buildings, in the long and short of it. It's just we don't have the $13 million a year yet.
Well, and again, this is, I'm gonna piggyback on yours for a second. I mean, we could not spend this money, right, because it doesn't have to be spent today.
Correct.
And we could put it towards something else, but what's gonna happen is we're gonna hit that date and we're gonna have 6 or 8 buses
Yes,
that we just have to retire, and now we're gonna have to go drop
$1 million,
$1 million today.
yeah.
And so this demonstrates clearly the responsible managing and expenditure of district funds. That doesn't get all the glory, because not everybody sees it, but. it
Just
is
out of
fiscally
curiosity, what's the average life of a bus? I mean, I know an 18-wheeler puts 500,000 miles on it.
Yeah, we typically get, yeah, go ahead.
Come on down, Mike.
Yeah, it's great.
I knew we were gonna get you one more
We,
time.
before Mike says anything, we have a lot of buses that have lifespan left, but we can't legally have them anymore.
Yeah,
Due to EPA is what this is directly tied to.
Yeah, that's correct. One of the buses that we're proposing that we replace is from 1999. That's probably one of our oldest buses that we have. They can last past its life cycle if we're maintaining it, and we do have some great quality mechanics over the years to have done that, but 1999 is probably one of our oldest.
Out of curiosity, what are we doing with the old buses? We're just.
Yeah, we pretty much destroy them We have different methods. We destroy the block and the engine, and then we either try to ship it off. Sometimes we're able to have people who will want the bus in some way or another, but we pretty much just destroy and get them totally.
Mike, have you seen a district get fined or have the EPA police shown up?
Not yet. It's not, the requirement's not until 2025. We are trying to monitor that and to see if there will be some extensions, knowing that many districts are facing this grind or this pinch point, if you will, in a couple of years.
I think it's also very critical to note, to remind some of our newer board members as well as the public, that the federal government reimburses us 70 cents on every dollar we spend on transportation, and that's paid over 10 years. So from your superintendent or the budget's perspective of lifespan of a bus is really 10 years for us, because just to do rough math, if we spent $100,000 on a bus, over 10 years, we'll get $70,000 of it back. And so it really pays to some extent for us to continue to invest in this, but depreciation. And so for me, the lifespan of a bus is 10 years, and then it allows us to go do depreciation again.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Mike. Okay, it's been moved, seconded, and discussed. All in favor? Oh, I'm on the wrong page, sorry. But yes, all in favor, raise your right hand.
Motion
Like
carries.
that was not what we were talking about. Item L, motion for the communication equipment.
Chair Idell, I move to approve the Estacada School District to purchase communication equipment and services from Vocera for the initial amount not to exceed $192,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I know we discussed it some, but I'm sure there are additional questions.
Are we going to sign a contract for this? And if so, can we get out of it if they don't meet our expectations?
Come on back down, Mike.
Because it sounded like we've got a few questions about it.
Yeah. We will most certainly have a contract. And part of the negotiation process with Christina Irish and our basically our leadership to be able to make sure that we have abilities to be flexible. Sometimes that's easier said than done, but we work with the company on having a mutual agreed contract that we fully execute.
I'll just add that a contract like that, I would have attorneys review to see what our need to get out of the contract is. So that is something I will bring that up. I don't know about the equipment costs and what that would be. That would be a factor in it, but I will look into that. And I don't know yet even what our contract period would be, so that would be a question for them. So those are all questions that will be a part of the contract process, but we'll make sure that I bring that up with the attorneys.
Service. What if Ryan stumbles and breaks it?
Oh, they are warranted.
For 3 years.
For 3 years.
I'm most interested in, I think you said it was like $8,000 annual for service and support, which seems reasonable.
Yes.
And then, again, I think what interests me the most is that we don't have to redo a phone system. I know we wouldn't do that if we had to have, we're spending $192,000, so we wouldn't redo a phone system because of that amount. But I wouldn't have to want to waste or use $192,000 if we were unsure it was going to integrate how we wanted into our system.
Yes.
So that's just the one concern of mine, that we just make sure that happens.
We'll be able to vet that and bring that back.
And I personally would love to be involved in demos or see how it works. Touchy-feely stuff, because, yes, with the equipment, just the equipment, Ben. Jeez Louise. All
I
right.
do have one follow-up question. So the 192 does not include any first, second, third year of the 8,000 contract?
I think it's
The
just the
first
first
year.
year.
Just the first
Just
year.
first year.
And 192 is what we budgeted for this project, and it's what the bid came in at, or roughly at. Our intention is to talk this down between $30,000 from this.
And our cost is going to be 20% of whatever number it is.
20.
I'm sorry, can you?
Aren't we supposed to match a 20%?
Nope.
This will be, this will be
It's a
our
different
full
one.
cost.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
This is all
That-
ESSER 3.
This is all.
All
this is
ESSER
not-
three.
This is not the E rate, this is ESSER
Okay.
3.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Good job. Yeah, nope, it's not that one.
Okay.
Yep.
My bad.
How many devices are we purchasing?
Approximately 230.
All right, any other questions?
Are we right on time?
No.
2 minutes late.
All right, all in favor, raise your right hand.
Motion carries.
On to item M, hearing of citizens for non-action items.
None.
On to N, adjournment. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Have a great evening.